Please welcome your host for this keynote,
Gothenburg. We are finally back. Welcome to SAPSA Impuls 2023 here in Gothenburg. We have been waiting for this moment to be on site, really meeting people, and for you to meet each other. As you could understand, there is a lot of AI talk, both in the keynote and elsewhere today. And I was thinking about having a discussion on the risks, having the HAL computer from 1964, from the Space Odyssey, to show how dangerous it is. But I thought that I will not do that, because it's here whether we want it or not. And one of the great advices that I heard is actually that we are three different people. We are either the ones that are scared, and we don't want to touch that. We are the ones that are a little bit curious about this. Maybe it can work. Or we are the ones that, okay, I want to try it. I want to make something out of it. When we see the speed, how AI is transforming, you could always think, what will happen with my job in a while? Whether you're developing, as we are going to speak in a session later, or something else. Because the machines are learning more rapid than you would ever imagine. So maybe it's time to think about, what part do you want to be in this? Do you want to be the ones whose job has been taken over by AI? Or do you want to take a part of it and embrace it? That's not an easy question, but it's very vital today. It's very important where we are, because we don't know how it looks 6 months from now, a year, 2 years, 3 years. We talked about it yesterday. It's such a rapid development, and we have just seen the surface. But let me don't talk too much about this, because we are coming into this in the next session. So let me welcome David on stage from SAP to talk about the AI in motion. David, please welcome on stage.
Thank you, Pontus. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Pontoppidan. I work in SAP, and I'm going to talk to you today about a race that we are all in. It is a race not to win, but a race to stay in order to keep up. In other words, we are trying to stay in the game. And to stay in the game, we need to embrace innovation, cloud, and ecosystems in the age of generative AI. This race that we are all in is about fundamentally answering a simple question. How do you stay afloat in an era of boundless change across markets and technologies? This is the #1 question facing organizations today. In order to understand how we go into this era of boundless change, how do I stay afloat or hold my breath long enough? Well, to answer that question, let's rewind time just a little bit and look at technology from a high level. And there seems to be some technological issues going on at the moment as well. Well, there you have it. It's AI talking back. Thank you, Pontus. Let's look at technological development from a high level and rewind time. And by high level, I mean let's look at technological development from the dawn of humanity and pre-humanity. You see, at the heart of this boundless change is the rate of development. Things today are not necessarily moving faster, but they are accelerating, meaning that the rate of change with which new innovations are occurring is growing exponentially. What you're seeing here is 3.4 million years of development. And at the heart of it, you have the first use of a tool 3.4 million years ago, when one of our ancestors picked up a rock and discovered that they could hit someone else on the head with it and kill them. The amount of time it took for them to take this innovation and realize that they could bang two rocks together and create fire was 2.4 million years. So it took a while. Humans didn't come about until 300,000 years ago. And it took us 288,000 years to discover that maybe we didn't have to catch our prey every single day and cook it over the fire. Maybe we could have something called agriculture. Each spin of this circle represents 200,000 years. But something happened in the last 200 years. Because if we're mapping out the history of technological development, we have to stretch out the line when we get to the year 1800 in order to visualize all of the important innovations and inventions that were made. This is the point where we discovered industrialization, when we discovered automation, and when we began coupling scientific insights with the production we were making in the market. No one knows where we're going in the future. Already now, gene editing and artificial intelligence is reaching market maturity. People born today are going to live well into the 22nd century. I mean, there are even plans to colonize Mars and revisit the moon within the next decade. One thing we know for certain is that the future is going to be completely different than what we have today, only a few years from now. But to me, what is most astounding when looking at this graphic is that if we are summarizing 3.4 million years of inventions and technological development, the past 200 years make up about a third of that image, if you include the future. That is incredible. And in the words of futurist and researcher Ray Kurzweil, everyone in this room is near immortal, in that we are hundreds of years old in the amount of innovation we have already consumed compared to what was available with the rate of change our ancestors experienced. We didn't get here straight away, of course. It's not like a caveman had a computer available and mapped out a 3.4 million year implementation roadmap with gradual improvements and followed this with work packages and project organizations and so forth along the way. Something drastic happened, especially in the past 5 or 6, 7 decades. I'm showing you two graphs here that would be amazing to a caveman. The first graph shows you that in 1956, you would need more money than what was available in the world to buy 1 terabyte of memory. Today, you can have 1 terabyte of memory on your mobile phone. At the same time, if we just rewind the clock 30 years to 1993, the computational capacity of the fastest supercomputers began to be measured in gigaflops, meaning the ability to make 1 billion computations per second, which was revolutionary, and do what is called parallel processing. Today, in 2023, we are no longer looking at gigaflops. We have broken the exaflop barrier, meaning that we are not counting in billions of computations that can be made per second, but billions of computations that can be made per second. It's no wonder if somebody from 1993 could look into the future that they would feel dizzy and perhaps feel like a caveman themselves. So are we going down a rabbit hole? Are we going into some sort of vortex where we are unsure of what is on the other side of it, on the other side of the tunnel? Yes, we absolutely are. Rabbit holes are very real. The acceleration that I'm talking about is known as the Red Queen effect. Now, this originally comes from Alice in Wonderland, where Alice, as you might remember, falls down into a rabbit hole. She has tea with the Mad Hatter, and she goes racing with the Red Queen. And Alice says, in our country, you generally get to somewhere if you run very fast for a long time, such as we've been doing. To which the Red Queen replies, a slow sort of country. Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep just in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that. There's an application for this literary thesis, which is evolutionary biology. And what I'm showing you here is that survival in modern evolutionary biological terms is driven by what you could call an innovation imperative. Here you have a rabbit and a fox, and the rabbit must make a defensive improvement to avoid predation. It must become faster, more agile, and so forth. In order to continue feeding, the fox must make an offensive improvement, also become faster. And the rabbit, once more, to try and escape the fox, develops more speed, more nimbleness and agility, and so forth. What lies at the end of this innovation circle are more opportunities and threats. And you could say that this innovation circle mirrors quite well the innovation imperative that has guided SAP's own history as a company. In the 70s and 80s, the core task of SAP was to digitize repetitive tasks and gradually begin to automate them. However, as the market evolved, and as our competitors evolved and technology with it, the software that we delivered became more and more focused on driving high-value automation and enabling new high-value tasks, very much thanks to the availability of more memory and more computational prowess, meaning you could suddenly do tasks that you were not able to do before. So what lies beyond opportunity's door? What lies beyond the rabbit becoming even faster, or S/4HANA? Well, beyond opportunity's door lie new competitors and new threats of extinction. This is a more modern view of the Red Queen hypothesis. And let's take a look at what happens in the established reality. You have the rabbit and the fox locked in this game with one another, trying to escape each other. And it's all about speed. And then at some point, what happens, this is known as punctuated equilibrium in evolutionary biology, the rabbit develops a new skill that is not about maintaining the rules of the established reality. It's not about becoming even faster. It's about camouflaging during wintertime when the fox needs to eat the most. In other words, it moves from the present known reality to a new reality. If the fox is unable to keep up, it will eventually become faster and faster, but unable to find the rabbit anywhere, and it will go extinct. The rabbit, meanwhile, will have outfoxed the fox, if you will, but face new predators, in this case in the form of an Arctic wolf, which does have the capability to also camouflage itself, therefore sneak up on the rabbit and sniff it out during wintertime. This is also the Red Queen hypothesis, and it is what is known as the innovator's dilemma, which is that there's an imperative to innovate in order to survive. But each time you innovate, you face new threats of extinction and competition. In business, keeping up with the status quo is hard enough. But we have a similar approach that the rabbit and the fox have when we are making strategic planning in terms of where we're going. We have a view of where market capabilities are going to be a certain amount of time from now. And based on these expectations, we lay plans. For example, to roll out technology that gives us the capability to meet market demand as it exists today and as it will exist tomorrow. But then something happens, the punctuated equilibrium. Some rabbit out there in the climate that we're a part of develops the ability to camouflage itself. Right? This could be generative AI, a company that manages to apply generative AI in a scalable and secure fashion that maintains data integrity, lives up to legislative requirements, and at the same time utilizes the power of generating new knowledge. It could also be new applications of the cloud or something else. And what you have suddenly is a competitive gap between where we expected the market to be and where it's actually going to be. If you then, through this disruptive innovation cycle, at the same time experience difficulties in adopting the new technology that you had planned on the basis of old knowledge, and this is not unheard of in the world of the context we're speaking of right now, then you are faced with doing technical upgrades rather than capability upgrades as you innovate along the way. And you end up with a functionality adoption gap and a huge gap to where the market is right now. You are not even close to where the market was when you were making the plan, and you end up being outfoxed by your competitors. So, businesses today and their IT need to support this race for opportunities, and they do this, what I would say, along a risk-opportunity matrix, along multiple levels. Now, I've visualized here severity of impact and short, medium, and long term in terms of how it will hit businesses. And I would say at the top, long term, and everything has a risk and an opportunity, right? Perhaps I should say that first. Everything that happens, there's a risk side to it and an opportunity side. And at the top, you have a redefinition of purpose. What is the business of business really about? We spoke about 1993. If you were to go back to 1993 and ask the largest company in the world at the time, Nippon Telephone and Telegraph, what is the business of business? The answer would be quite simple, and I know this because the annual report is ready and available from then. The business of business is to maximize shareholder return. In other words, it is to make money. That's why we exist. That's very far from the reality today of why customers and partners engage with business, why employees choose to work from one organization than another. We're moving in a new direction. And I think this is something that's going to have an impact long-term on the business. Medium term, you have the industry-specific challenges, whether you are in energy or industrial manufacturing or financial services and so forth, that are relevant to your industry and how you're trying to meet them, whether it is shortening innovation cycles and production cycles, whether it is serialization and tracking, whether it is meeting new legislative requirements and so forth. They are industry-specific challenges. And here and now, with perhaps the largest impact, there can be no doubt that one of the key topics is supply chain, right? How do you maintain the integrity of the supply chain, the distribution and just-in-time delivery that it has enabled, while at the same time building up strategic stockpiles or resilience to mitigate geopolitical disruption or climate disruption? But all of these different areas are somewhat within the scope of the organization to plan around strategically. And you can see that because if you read through an annual report, it will talk about these things for most companies. It has the capability and can adapt to the technology to deal with it. What is truly interesting to me is what lies outside of the span of one organization to either capture in terms of opportunities or mitigate in terms of risks. This is what I would call the truly transformational or the truly catastrophic. What could that be in the short term? Well, generative AI could be something truly transformational in the short term. Climate change, probably truly catastrophic in the short term as well, if we don't do anything, and even when we do something. Midterm, it could be artificial general intelligence with some form of singularity probably on the horizon. And in terms of the truly catastrophic, loss of biodiversity, biodomes and biospheres, and the implication that will have on businesses and their ability to do business, not just from a supply chain or logistical perspective, but from a political perspective, from a societal perspective as well. And long term, I'm not even sure I want to know. I mean, we have enough on our plate already, right? So I think that one's uncertain just yet. But the future-proof enterprises that can operate in this spectrum are the enterprises that build a foundation of innovation that allows them to stretch across this risk and opportunity spectrum. And on top of that, they have their core business, what they do best, why they have the operational excellence and the insight to stay in the market. They then build the capabilities and through enabling technology to meet challenges as they arise, medium term and long term. And at the furthest edges of the enterprise, you have the ecosystem in which it can engage. This enables it to build end-to-end business processes that support value creation, both upstream and downstream. And you will find, surprisingly, that this fits really well with SAP's own product strategy for 2023, where you have the innovation foundation at the bottom. This is the business technology platform, right? This is where your customizations reside, where your integrations reside, your extensions and so forth. This is where you do your analytics, where you do your AI solutions. And on top of that, you have your core business processes, the most valuable parts of your business that you need to protect and that you need to keep clean. You can then extend short, medium, and long term with technological capabilities to meet the challenges as they arise, whether they are related to supply chain or industry-specific challenges in the industry cloud, or related to who do we want to be as a company, whether it is towards our customers through the CX portfolio, towards our employees through SuccessFactors and HXM, or towards our partners through our intelligent spend and business networks. And around that, you have the solutions that enable the ecosystem to work and drives end-to-end business processes. SAP's strategy is fundamentally about reshaping the role that our software plays in enabling businesses to do this sort of strategic planning and deal with these opportunities and risks when they arrive, even if they are truly transformational or truly catastrophic. And it fits, therefore, within the opportunity and risk matrix that I drew. So, what about AI then? Where does AI fit in all of this? I mean, what can't AI do right now? That's a question that you need to be, you need to check at least once a day what's going on Reddit in order to keep up to date. I mean, it's giving me a headache just to keep track. But let's look at some of the things it can do. It can write abstracts for peer-reviewed journals that fool the scientists and the boards of those peer-reviewed journals. And this is including for hard science, like physics and astronomy and biology, journals such as Nature. It can also win art competitions ahead of very skilled artists who've spent years perfecting their insight into illustrating the human condition. Or, and I think this is where urban planning and architecture is going in the next 5 to 10 years. This is essentially The Sims, if you're familiar with that video game. Researchers at Stanford University build a sandbox environment with predefined artificial intelligences that have various characteristics, and they interact on their own. And how they interact influences what happens between them, the relationships they build, the actions they take, and so forth. This is essentially a digital twin of a small society. And we have no control over what's happening, but we can look at it and be amazed. And of course, AI can win prestigious photography awards, such as this fake image, which won the Sony World Photography Awards only about a week and a half ago. So, where does that leave us? Well, ChatGPT can do my job. That's kind of sad, isn't it? I mean, that leaves me maybe a little bit blue. But at the same time, ChatGPT can do my job. That's amazing. I mean, it's not all parts of my job that are standing on stage in front of an audience and having a good time and staying in a nice hotel. Parts of my job are quite tedious. I wouldn't mind ChatGPT doing those parts of my job. So it's a matter of perspective, I think, in terms of, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? But it is happening. So what does it mean for people? Well, if you look at the World Economic Foundation and the skills needed for the 21st century future of work, here are some of those skills that the World Economic Foundation listed. At the foundational level, it's about building literacy, numeracy, scientific understanding, and so forth. This is the foundation to understand the logic of the conceptual building blocks that go into building some form of reasoning. In other words, understanding, well, why is what you're saying true? But on top of that, the toolbox that people need to build today, whether it's youngsters or employees, are tools around critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. And the key value add, the key qualities that we build at the very top, the human value add, if you will, is curiosity, initiative, persistence or grit, adaptability, leadership, social and cultural awareness. In other words, what we erroneously call soft skills today. I mean, she's good at communicating. People generally like her. She knows how to enter a room, but can she really crunch the data when it comes down to it? Can she deliver on the quantitative side? What a meaningless question to ask, and even more meaningless tomorrow. Because the fundamental human value add is quite different from rudimentary calculations, however advanced they may be. What did you see? All right, let's try it one more time. I'll see if I can do it really quickly. How many people saw a concert first or second time around? Yeah. It's a combine harvester harvesting cotton crops. AI doesn't need time to think. Doesn't need more than a millisecond to get it right every single time. If we have such difficulty determining that, why are we trying to be like machines? I think we are seeing something that we could call the rise of the intelligent, connected enterprise. A human and digital coexistence, where human skills and AI skills are going to complement each other much more than ever before. And they will complement each other through cloud, because that enables innovation to always be present. It enables the scalability and the elasticity to do the necessary computations. Through a strong innovation foundation to constantly stay up to date, and through an ecosystem to work together to solve the problems and issues that are so complex that we cannot solve them on our own, whether we possess a human intelligence or an artificial intelligence. So why cloud? Why am I talking about cloud? Well, Gartner foresees that by 2027, at least 50% of organizations will use industry cloud platforms versus just 5% last year. At the same time, if you look at this triangle, most organizations are here today, meaning that if cloud today is a technology disruptor in your organization, or it is a capability enabler that allows, for example, your dev teams and your ops teams and your sec teams to work together, then you are pretty much in the middle of the pack. You are where everyone else is. Where we're going in 2027 is most organizations are going to be up here. Cloud is going to be an innovation facilitator, because the push of innovation for critical business processes and for the core of your business is going to be much greater. And it's going to be a business disruptor, because just like cloud at the technological level, at the infrastructural level, enabled DevSecOps, it will enable different business functions to work together as well, whether it's finance, sales, marketing, supply chain, logistics, procurement, production, you name it. Because just like there's no such thing as a dev problem today, that problem can be automated. There's no such thing as a finance problem in the future. They are interconnected. Why am I talking about innovation then? Well, this is SAP's foundation for the future of ERP. If you look at your core, we're always talking about the core. Your enterprise core here is where you have your competitive necessity and you're driving your operational efficiency. You have out-of-the-box functionalities here that can be quality and cost optimized and commoditized. Examples could be managing your accounts receivables and payables, managing your inventory or forecasting or your payroll. These are functionalities and processes that should be standardized and commoditized. Around that, you have your business-specific core. And this is fit for purpose, right? This is your competitive advantage, tuned to the needs of your customers. This shouldn't sit in here where you have the commoditization of processes. It should sit outside. And the thought is, of course, that this sits within the ERP, this sits in the BTP. Now, around that, you have composable architectures. And the composable architectures allow you to plug and play the modular business capabilities that are pre-packaged, easily discover business capabilities and reuse them, and orchestrate them to put together in a way that provides a holistic focus relevant for your enterprise. And then finally, all of these different composable architectures are connected through suite qualities, like common innovation with zero friction and interoperability, because it's delivered through a suite of applications. And of course, on top of all of this is the data foundation, right? This is where you have one domain model. You have one approach to data governance, one approach to data management, to establish a single source of truth when it comes to data, wherever you're operating with that data in the enterprise, whichever application you're using to access or store that data. You have a structured and organized quality data approach for your enterprise. This is the future of ERP in terms of where SAP is going. And why ecosystems then? Well, let's look at automotive. Automotive is a great example. I read an article or a paper by Accenture yesterday, great paper by the way. It says that Scope 3 emissions are 11.4x greater than all other emissions combined. Meaning that if you are measuring your Scope 1 and your Scope 2 emissions, then your license to operate is on borrowed time. Scope 3 is where it's at in terms of harvesting the benefits that will allow us to meet the requirements and challenges of climate change. And in an ecosystem perspective, the problem for the automotive industry is you have many different suppliers that go together in order to produce what goes into a vehicle before the consumer is able to buy it. But you have disparate data lakes and very little specific information on what the product carbon footprint is in the value chain. The reason for this is also you have inconsistent methodology in terms of how you calculate it, and you don't have an interoperable infrastructure. So what you're seeing here is an inability to calculate what is the carbon footprint of my product throughout its useful lifetime. Why not replace that with these average values from databases with specific data and gain an end-tier visibility throughout the entire value chain of your product? Well, that is what we're working with in one such ecosystem for automotive, which is the SAP Industry Network for Automotive, to solve such a wicked problem that we cannot solve on our own. And one of the ways we're trying to solve it is what you're looking at here, is ZF Friedrichshafen is receiving a number of different elements and a bill of material in order to produce an 8-speed automatic gearbox. When they do that, they will have the insight of data exchanged peer-to-peer, one level down and one level up. Meaning they will have the insight in terms of what is the product carbon footprint of the clutch, of the shaft, of the casing, of the transmission fluid, of the gears, and so forth. And similarly, the tier 2 suppliers here that relied on different raw materials to produce, for example, a clutch or a shaft, have the insight into what was the product carbon footprint of those elements. Which means that when BMW gets the 8-speed automatic gearbox for their 3 Series, they know exactly what is the combined product carbon footprint of this and how does it affect the total product carbon footprint of the vehicle I'm about to sell to consumers. And we're able to achieve this through a distributed ledger alongside a blockchain with zero knowledge proof interaction along each of these different steps to validate the data as it is transferred upstream or downstream. Such an ecosystem allows us to deliver product carbon footprint transparency outside of the box. And what I just spoke about is what we call our carbon data exchange solution. This is a lab preview, but essentially we can do seamless integration of this solution to industry networks, to our own business network, to suppliers and customers, auditors, certifiers, and so forth. And we can also deliver it end-to-end out of our own product footprint management tool, which of course can be delivered outside of the box through SAP ERP or line of business specific solutions. So that's an example of the value of ecosystems. So, having spoken about cloud, having spoken about innovation, having spoken about ecosystems, I thought I would look to the future using one of my favorite TV shows of all time, which is already old, and I think that says something. It's Futurama. Is anyone familiar with Futurama? Fry stumbles into a time machine, travels hundreds of years into the future. Everything's very, very different from whence he came. And in one of these shows, this is one of my favorite episodes, he has a dream where an advertisement is broadcast to him in his dream about this great new bathing suit he can try on. And he's complaining to his friend Leela about how they had commercials in the 20th century, but not like they have in the future. So, for example, we had it not in our dreams. Of course, we had commercials on TV, we had it on radio, in magazines, and movies, and at ball games, and we had it on buses, and milk cartons, and on T-shirts, and bananas, and written in the sky. But we did not have commercials in our dreams. No sirree, that is too invasive. Now, I don't think we're heading towards commercials in our dreams, but if you think about Futurama, is the idea of interactive ads really that foreign when we keep ChatGPT in mind? I mean, why am I interacting with some generic persona or conception of who I am as a 37-year-old father who's living in Copenhagen when I'm buying a sofa? Why am I not able to interact with that advertisement and ask it specifically, how will that sofa fit in my living room with the other furniture I have? Which color would look best in terms of the look that I'm going for? How will it support my lumbar issues that I have with my back and so forth? I think we're going to see very, very quickly a rise in this type of advertisement. But are you able to support it as a use case in terms of what it will mean for customer specificity and customer requirements on your part? All right, here's another example. This is Bender the robot who's caught shoplifting. And of course, he's a robot, so the question is, has he really done anything illegal when he's shoplifting? I mean, that's not quite clear. So, we all know that the customer is always boss, right? But what if the customer is a robot? And I've chosen here the example of AutoGPT, but also just 3 days ago at a TED Talk, it was announced through OpenAI that they're going to have their own agents do this. An agent is essentially an artificial intelligence that sits on top of the generative AI and continually probes it and prompts it to get the best possible response. The best possible response could be, what is the cheapest price that I can possibly get for something as it is available in the market? And it finds out for you. It could also be a prompt to please negotiate down this price with these 3 different vendors for a new fridge for my kitchen. Are you able to support such a use case with what it will require from you and from a customer service point of view if the customer you're engaging with is a robot acting as an agent for somebody else? And then finally, in this episode, Bender finds a new best friend by cloning himself. I mean, who hasn't dreamt of that? Well, as we know, you can't be two places at once. But what if you need to be? I mean, we're already twinning processes in the digital factory floor. Why not twin ourselves? Right, this is coming to the latest version of Microsoft Teams. It has very basic functionality, but allows you to sit in on multiple meetings at the same time, and you're prompted when your response is required. What if we could build on that, and we could have, this is my scope of work, what I cover, this is my personality, this is the way I typically interact. I sit in on multiple meetings, I do these various things, and if I'm prompted to do something that goes outside of my scope of normal interactions, I am prompted directly by the artificial intelligence for human intelligence response. And at the end of the day, I have an overview of what my tasks will be, and they will fit together in a way that achieves what is humanly possible to achieve in an 8-hour workday. Are you able to support such a use case? That might be coming very soon as well. Okay, so rounding up, putting the hype into perspective. Right, here's one of my favorite quotes. This is from Newsweek in 1995 by quite a clever fellow, an astronomer and PhD, who wrote the article, "The Internet, bah, why cyberspace isn't and never will be nirvana." And what's interesting to me in that article is that many of the things he mentions are quite right. He talks about the lack of editors and critics, how it's difficult to find the right data and make sure that the quality is there. He talks about the democratic challenges of the internet. I mean, this is what we're dealing with today, with fake news and rigged elections and so forth. But the conclusion that he draws, of course, is absolutely bonkers. And he says so himself, that now he sort of, whenever he thinks he knows what's going to happen, he says to himself, I might be wrong here, Cliff. I might be wrong. So let me end with a quote. This is a quote by the famous astrophysicist Niels Bohr. And Niels Bohr said, prediction about the future is very difficult, right? But I like this quote because he was asked, when he discovered the orbital path of the electron around the atom, what would this mean for the future? And he says, prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. But that discovery enabled a little something called electronics, meaning that the companies that were around in 1922 and are still here today are the companies that had the capability and the boldness to consume innovations as they arose throughout that scientific discovery and become digital enterprises, staying in the race with the Red Queen, at least for 100 years more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're touching upon all those, I wouldn't say fears, but questions that arises. And that maybe we should not be afraid. It's that we should embrace some of the things coming. Looking at the mountain, shitting, yeah, the AI is here. And I think that's the right approach to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need to get in the water in order to swim.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pontus.